Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a Wheel of Time vlog. I have not read this series before whatsoever. I don't really know what it's about, and so I thought I'd vlog my experience reading it. I tried to start this vlog a little while ago and then I just lost a bit of traction, but now I can say that I have read 105 pages. I am definitely invested now, and the way it started was kind of not meandering, but it was a little bit slower, and I guess that's because it was trying to build up the world that we're going to start experiencing and introduce us to some of the characters. So we met Rand, we met his father Tam, we met Moraine as well, and I've seen her name thrown around a little bit when people discuss Wheel of Time, so I mean, I know she's important and I don't know why, but the way that it's gone so far, it seems like she's a sorcerer. And what has happened so far is that the Trollocs have attacked Rand and Tam on the farm, and then Tam's musings have made Rand realize that he's potentially an orphan boy who Tam found on a battlefield and then adopted because Tam and his wife wanted a child. And so it is talked about that Tam's wife Kari has passed away, and that was more than 15 years ago. So I'm anticipating Rand is like 16 years old, maybe 17, maybe even 15, but he's definitely a teenager. We've been introduced to his friends in the town as well. I believe Matt is the name of one of them. What's her name? It starts with Egwene is another one. Yep. And Rand has decided to talk to Moraine because Tam has been injured. And I think this is where, not the inciting action, because I think the inciting action was the Trollocs attacking the house that Rand and Tam were in, but also why did they attack? So I'm assuming this has something to do with Rand and potentially the chosen one trope that people talk about with this series. So is Rand the chosen one or not? We don't know yet. I know that men in this world struggle to use the magic system because it depletes their sanity or something. That is yet to be clarified because I haven't really seen much magic used. There was talk about Moraine using magic and using like a cool lightning ball thing to defend the village against the Trollocs, but that's all that's been talked about so far. I really have no expectations, and I love the old classic fantasy tropes of like orphan or young farm boy going through a powerful adventure and becoming more in line with his abilities and realizing who he is. So I think that's the way that this is going to go, and it seems like he's struck a bargain with Moraine to help his father not die. He was like, basically, I will do anything you want in exchange for you healing my father. So when he said anything she wants, I was like, oh, he's gotten himself into trouble that he doesn't know he's in yet. So that's where I stand with this series at the moment. I'm gonna try and update every 100 or so pages because it's like 750 pages long, and I figured that 8 updates was pretty decent. So unless I read to a cataclysmic part, or if a part is kind of dragging, or not dragging, but if it's kind of building something and there hasn't been much going on in terms of changing the plot and throwing a spanner in, I might leave my update until something more interesting happens. But that's where we're at for the moment. I'm planning on reading more today. I hope to finish this as soon as I can, so hopefully a 750 page book doesn't take me too long to read. I am now 137 pages into this, and Rand is going with Moraine and leaving the town after the attack with the Trollocs. And I just want to say that I thought they were going to use this opportunity to kill off Tam, the father, or the father. He might not be the father since he seems to have found Rand, but they haven't actually had that conversation yet. So if they killed him off, it would be like them killing off the mentor that had the knowledge, and then the reader got a hint of that knowledge and so did the character, and then it didn't end up going anywhere. So I'm glad they kept Tam's character around, and it looks like he's just going to follow on after he's healthy and follow Rand and Moraine and Matt and the other character, Land, the water, and someone else from the Two Rivers town, because they have to leave the town obviously so that the Trollocs don't come back to the town and try and find Rand, because for whatever reason the Dark One wants him. And that's something else that's really cool that's happened so far. We've had more explanation of like the magic and the names of the places and the world building. So it was very much like a small world building that happened at the beginning with Rand and his father and the purpose of them being at the town and kind of setting up the setting. But now that we've got the setting and we've been introduced to a few different characters, we're starting to get the magic system build up, and the magic system seems to be kind of taboo and based on stories. And now Rand is starting to realize that the stories are potentially true, even though some things have been embellished, like the fact that the monster or the shadow was like 12 foot tall. Not the case. I'm also surprised that so far it's only been in one perspective, because the way that this was pitched to me, I thought it would be multiple perspectives. So maybe that changes a little bit later on. I imagine as more characters get introduced and we start to see them recurring more, we'll start to hear from them more. So I'm anticipating that we're probably going to hear at some point from Moraine, because she's got such a different background to Rand for example. And with Rand, we're learning about the world as he learns about it too. So I think once we have more traction for what the world is and what the magic system potentially is, we're going to see Moraine's perspective about how it's used, which I'm excited for. I'm always excited to see magic built up and a system of magic built up and world building built up, so we can see how that works later. So I am nibbling away at this slowly and I am enjoying it more and more. It's just work and effort to get through it because obviously it's so long. And also I didn't realize when I bought this, but it's actually really stiff with the pages and so it's hard to hold open. I don't really care about a cracked spine though, so I guess I'm gonna end up cracking the spine as I go because it's already started to go. So I'm now 200 pages in and I have a few things that I want to talk about that I'm excited for, and they mentioned the Children of Light, which seems to be like a cult almost. And then it looks like all the characters are going to Tar Valon, a big city where they're likely to be safer because the, oh man, what are they called? It's like the witches, the sorcerers, like Moraine, they are prevalent there. And I think from that point onwards, when they get to that city, that's potentially when they're going to split up. I think they're going to split. That's my theory, because if we see multiple perspectives throughout the rest of this series, whereas at the moment we're just mostly following Rand, I think that they're going to have perspectives, and that's what I'd like to see, because they all seem obviously to have stuff in common because they've come from the same place, but when they branch off they'll have different specializations almost, and I'm looking forward to seeing what their different quest like journeys are. Also, Tom the Gleeman mentioned a prophecy, and it was kind of like Sword in the Stone almost, and effectively the sword that is stuck in the stone, that is what the Children of Light, the cult-like group, are protecting, so that the person who is part of the prophecy can't access it to fulfill the prophecy. And Tom's like, if the prophecy was easy, then there's not any point in having a prophecy. So that really leads into my theory of Rand being the chosen one, but I think that's what this is going to set up and then potentially subvert. I'm not really sure yet, but I'm really happy to be surprised. Again, I'm enjoying it so far. I also really liked earlier on that Egwene, the farm girl who was at the same town as Rand, who seems to be kind of set up like Rand's potential love interest, but he keeps having misfires in conversation with her, and I find it pretty funny that he just is a little bit incompetent. But I like that her and Moraine are having conversations about being magic, because it looks like she's going to be magic as well, and that led into talks about the Wheel of Time and the One Power. So we're starting to see more of the magic develop, but not really how to use it yet, so that's, I'm sure that's coming. I am now 310 pages in. I have just encountered the part where they have gone to Shadar Logoth, I think it's called. It's like the ancient city that all the Trollocs are afraid of going in, but they've been forced into going in there anyway, and so our crew are on the run from them. And I knew they'd get split up. I knew they would. I think I said that earlier. And the way that they've gotten split up makes me suspicious, because Perrin and Egwene got split up but then ended up together, and now Perrin has fallen into the river, so they've both been separated again. So I think Egwene has either been captured or she'll find her magic by herself, and then Perrin, I have no idea what's going to happen to him. But Matt ended up with Rand, our main character, and they've both run into the Gleeman Tom. And I actually don't really like Matt that much. He's the one that traditionally gets into trouble and causes reasons for Rand and Perrin to get into trouble with him, and he just seems to make really dumb decisions. Like, he trusted the random guy that they met in this ancient city that Moraine had said was not necessarily safe, and he lost his mind when they found treasure. So I actually don't really like Matt that much, and he seems to use a bow and arrow really efficiently, which is pretty cool for his character. But apart from that, I don't really like him. He seems like he is on track to make some bad choices and drag the others down with him, and it's like his characterization is promising us that something really bad is going to happen and it's going to be his fault, because he seems to disagree with Moraine, and I'm not liking where that trajectory is potentially going. I mean, for the plot it's going to be interesting, but I don't like his character. Nynaeve, I think is how you say her name, the wisdom from the Two Rivers town that they grew up in. She has now joined the party, which is great, and I think she's going to be the other, oh, what's the witch name? I can't remember. What Moraine is. She's going to be what Moraine is as well, because earlier on in the book they said that there were two women in the Two Rivers town that had these potential magical abilities, and Egwene came with them straight away, so obviously she's one of them. But the other one is probably Nynaeve, who is also the other wisdom. I got interrupted and now I can't remember the train of thought I was going down, but I think I was talking about the three women who are going to be magical. So Moraine is one, Egwene is the other, and Nynaeve is the last one. And also I wonder how long it's going to take them to reunite, if it's going to be quite instant or if it's going to take a while, because the fact that they're going to diverge now interests me quite a lot. And it gives the characters a chance to embrace their abilities, because Rand has been kind of training with his sword with Lan under instruction, and obviously Matt can shoot a bow and Tom is a gleeman who can spin tails and lies really easily. Egwene is potentially magical but hasn't really broken through yet, and Perrin seems to think things through a lot but not really do any big action. So it's going to be really intriguing to see what happens next. Also, Rand and crew got onto a boat fleeing the Trollocs, and then Rand thought he was going to die and said something or did something, and something happened, like a force to get rid of the Trollocs. So is that like him being magical and drawing on the one power? Anyway, I'm going to read some more and I'll get back to you later. Why hello again. I am now 400 pages into this and that marks 53%, so I am officially over halfway, but I wanted to pop in and talk about a couple of things. And the first one is that in Perrin's perspective, he's with Egwene now and they're traversing the forest and they've come across this guy. What was his name? I had it in my head before. It starts with E. E-Y-R-A-S or something. And he is with a pack of wolves. And when it alluded to Perrin also having the same ability as him, like communicating with wolves and being one of the pack, I was like, oh, because that made me think of Robin Hobb, and I love her books, and Night Eyes in that series, a wolf, is one of my favourite characters ever. And wit magic, which is the magic that communicates with animals and gives people like an animal familiar if they bond with them, is like the heart of that series. And so when I saw the wolves in here, it made me just very happy and emotional and gave me like a connection with this that I didn't think I'd have. But it's probably not as deep as I'm making it out to be, but it is something that I really enjoyed seeing. I also realized that I actually haven't discussed Rand and Perrin and Matt and their dreams, because they're all having the same nightmares of the Dark One, and he's always coming to them. Rand most of all, obviously, because for the most part we've been following him primarily and been in his head mostly, but now that they've all branched off, we're getting to see each of their heads and each of their character perspectives. And like I thought, they branched off and they haven't found each other yet, and it's been a little bit of time, so they're all in kind of different locations with different contexts now, and I think they're probably going to meet up in either Camelane or in Tar Valon. If they make it there, we'll see what happens. But Rand's dreams, the fact that he could prick himself with a thorn and then wake up and his finger was bleeding, that's pretty scary, and I wonder if they're actually gonna bring it up to Moraine if they run into her again, or if they're just gonna have to kind of figure it out as they go, because Matt seems to be getting very paranoid and we can see him deteriorating, and Rand can kind of see it happening, but Rand is trying not to acknowledge it for what it is. And Matt actually has a dagger from when they were in that like secret city that the Trollocs didn't like before. Rand didn't take any of the treasure, neither did Perrin, but Matt already had the dagger in his hand when they dragged him away, so that he didn't make a deal with Mordoth or whoever it was that was in the city that was like that weird shadow creature. So I think something funny is going on with Matt, and I don't know if it's caused by him taking the treasure or if it's caused by him just having the same dreams that Rand is, but maybe he's bowing more towards the Dark One instead of towards Rand and his friends. Which would be interesting, having three potential farm boys in Perrin, Matt and Rand, and then having one of them become a Dark One instead, or a Dark Friend or a Dark Bringer or whatever they're called. I think that would be cool, because why else would the Dark One want them if it wasn't to do bad things? Because obviously he wants Rand, we know he wants Rand, and that's why he is pursuing them all, but the other two were kind of born around the same time, and that's why they're all on this journey effectively at the same time. They were together before, not so much now. And the fact that Matt and Rand have been put together when the characters all split up makes me suspicious, because what is going to go down with his character? Also, Tom the Gleeman has just died. They've just killed him. Well, the Midriel, however you pronounce it, has just killed the Gleeman Tom, and because of his sacrifice, Matt and Rand escaped. I really liked Tom. He was adding an interesting element to kind of protect the two boys, and he wanted to protect them because his nephew, I think, was killed by the Aes Sedai, which is like what Moraine is, and he didn't want that to happen to the two boys, and that's why he was protecting them. So it gave him some really cool backstory, and then they just killed him off. So that makes me really sad. I was kind of expecting him to go forward and be more involved involved, but he has been fairly involved so far, and he's taught the boys some interesting Gleeman tricks like tumbling and handstands and juggling and cool stuff like that. So he's made a mark on them already, and I guess that's why he had to go, so they could develop without him now. And it's obviously more of a risk if he's not there, because, you know, they could traverse through places and he could cover for them, and now he can't. So they are very much on their own. Also, the book title, Eye of the World, has come up a couple of times. Once or twice with Perrin when they ran into a traveling group of trinket people. They're tinkerers, I think, tinkerers. They run into traveling tinkerers, and they've talked around the campfire about the Eye of the World and the breaking, which seemed to happen 3,000 years ago. So I think that's what happened in the prologue of this book, and that's what we witnessed. And now we're following the fallout of what the breaking caused. And in Rand's dreams, or in his nightmares rather, he's also said, "Light help me," or "Light save me," when the Dark One was pursuing him, and the Dark One was like, "The Eye of the World can't help you now." So I'm assuming it links in towards the magic system, but we're not going to find out exactly what that is yet. Or if we do, it'll be rather close to the end, maybe. Given that it's the title of the first book, I assume we find out more in this one, but it could be something that is just set up early and then it takes place later on. As for the perspectives that we're at, I'm on page 400, so Matt and Rand have just escaped the city in Whitebridge, and they've run away from the Fade there, and Tom has died. And then after that, we are also following Perrin and Egwene and the new wolf guy, who I think is cool, but I expect we're not going to stay with him for very long, just enough for Perrin to kind of discover his power. And they've met the traveling tinkers. That's kind of where their story was paused. And then we went into Matt and Rand, and then after them, I'm assuming we're gonna go back to Moraine, Nynaeve, and Lan. So we haven't really seen much of them. Nynaeve did run into Lan and Moraine, and it has been revealed to her that she is an Aes Sedai, and Nynaeve hates them. She really does not like them. And again, it leads back into what I was talking before about them being taboo. But the way that people are brought up, it seems to be like there's a hatred for them, and I'm not sure why, because they don't seem to have done anything particularly bad or wrong. It's like they don't like the power or the one power or the magic. So it must just be a cultural thing in here. The people don't like it. So I'm assuming that's why Nynaeve hates it, and that's why Nynaeve doesn't want to be an Aes Sedai. But the evidence that Moraine gave her is pretty convincing that she is one. So I hope to see more of them soon, because obviously they don't like each other. So it's an interesting dynamic to read about. So that's really it. I don't have too many predictions, except that Matt's probably going to do something bad, and then it's not going to be as recoverable as his tricks were in the village. And that's something I've said before anyway. Perrin is going to uncover his wolf abilities, and then Egwene maybe will get herself into a bit of trouble, but that's really all I can think about at the moment. And the fact that I don't really know where this is going to go next is what really intrigues me. So hopefully Rand doesn't end up by himself, but if he does, he'll have to rely on his father's teachings about the void, because that's what Rand focuses on when he needs to concentrate really hard. So I'm assuming that that's what is practiced when characters learn magic or learn something peculiar, because I don't think Tam is just a sheep farmer. Pretty sure he used to be a soldier, because Rand's sword is still a mystery of its origin. It just appeared with his father one day, and it seems to have a very distinctive symbol on it of a heron that people recognize, and Rand doesn't know why. So now we've been following Rand and Matt on the road a little bit. They're using all of their tricks and skills they learned from Tom the Gleeman, and they're kind of trying to make their way to Camelin, and they're just being hunted down relentlessly. So that's where we're at with Rand and Matt. But I'm 508 pages in now, and this book has actually successfully made me emotional. When it was Perrin's chapters and him and Egwene are running with Elias, the wolf guy, they get tracked down by, oh, what are they called? The white, like the light people, the cult-like people I mentioned before, but now that I've passed them, I can't remember what their specific name is. And the people that Perrin and Egwene were captured by are pretty damn terrifying. So luckily they're on their way to Camelin anyway, so I anticipate that they'll meet up with Rand and Matt, and all of them are going to be in pretty sorry states, to be honest. Rand and Matt are probably going to discover that there's an execution happening, because Perrin killed a few of the guards or a few of the soldiers that were after them. So he's been put to a death sentence, but they need to transport him from A to B first. At least they're on track to meet up with their friends in the city that they said they would be in, but not under the greatest circumstances. Also, Elias has not been mentioned again, and so I'm assuming he got away, and I don't know if that means he'll come back or if he's just gone for good, because one of the wolves died. The wolf was killed, and it was killed by the Bringers of Light, or whatever they're called. They're posing as like this religion, but they're against the Aes Sedai, they're against all of the Dark dark friends, and I don't know what their stance on magic is. I think it's a bad thing. So maybe they're like pure, or they see themselves as pure because they're not being influenced by anything. They haven't been talked about too much, but I'm interested in reading more about them because they seem really terrifying, and if we are only seeing like the minions so far, I can't imagine what the leaders of this group would be like even. So pretty terrifying. I'm invested. I also want to know what's going on with Rand because he accidentally, seems like he called down lightning, and he was in the middle of a storm with Matt. They were stuck in this tavern in this room, and there were dark friends outside trying to get in and take them to the Dark One and convince them to submit whether they liked it or not. So Rand called on the one power maybe, and the lightning struck the bars on the window, and so he and Matt could escape in the rubble, and the light blinded Matt, and he's only just trying to get his vision back, and it made Rand really ill. So Rand has just broken through a fever, and while they were trying to get Rand through this fever, they were taking refuge in a barn, and this woman who was a dark friend came and tried to stab them and kill them. So dark friends are on their trail, and Rand is only just recovering. So I'm pretty sure he's had a run-in with the magic, and it's just using him or coursing through him, and he doesn't know how to taper it off, because there are moments when he like laughs hysterically and that kind of thing, or he finds himself doing something and it's not until afterwards he's like, that was insane. So I think he's being affected by the magic, but obviously because I don't know how it works yet, I'm not really sure how it's happening. So I'm looking forward to seeing that explored more. Like I've said throughout this vlog, I'm liking that the magic is there, but it's not quite been explained yet, and we're seeing it more and more prevalent with Perrin especially, and the different kinds, I mean, because he's accepted or like at least acknowledged that he can talk to wolves. Magical things are happening, the tension is getting higher, and I don't know how much more I'm going to update, but I hopefully will update every 100 or so pages. Because I've only got like 2 more updates I guess to go, I might update more closer to the end depending on the sequence of events, but we'll see how we go. Almost done. I've now read 550 pages, and Rand and Matt have just got to the city of Camelin, and they have met up with the bartender, or the innkeeper rather, and he used to know Tom, and Tom before he died told them to go to this particular innkeeper, and it turned out that there was more to Tom than met the eye. And I said earlier that I thought he got killed off pretty soon because he had more story to uncover, so I guess I kind of realized that he was more than meets the eye at the beginning. But we have discovered that he was actually involved with the Queen, and he went to rescue his nephew from the Aes Sedai, and the Queen found out. It didn't really go into depth about what had specifically happened, but it seemed like Tom had ticked off the wrong people, and it seemed like he'd been kicked out of Camelin? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And so Tom had a price on his head, and the Queen therefore knew who he was. So if the boys mentioned Tom's name during their stay in Camelin, then they're probably going to get picked up by the Queen. So the innkeeper is giving them a place to stay for the moment, and he knows about the dark friends that are chasing them. So at the moment they're in this like safe haven area, so we get to explore more of their inner character workings, because so far it's just been them trying to survive and get through things. So you see Matt and how paranoid he is and how lonely he feels because he believes that everyone has died, and you also see Rand, who while he relates to Matt doesn't want to be the same, and so he actually went out into this like inn, this tavern, and this tavern has a library, and so he's in this little library section, and he comes across this character named Loyal, the Ogier, I think is how you say it. So sorry if I got that wrong, but I'm not listening to the audiobook, I don't know how to pronounce anything. And he's like a giant Trolloc, except he's not. He's like an intelligent being who comes from the Stenning, I think that's what it's called, which was the area that Egwene and Perrin were at with Elias. At least it was one of the areas that were the Stennings. They're like a spot that protects from dark friends, even though mortal men can go into them. So that's where he's from, and he's like 90 years old, and that's considered young for his species. So he's having a chat with Rand, and Rand ends up telling him their whole life story up until that point, and it looks like they've gained a character for their party. So I'm really interested to see what his backstory is and why he cares so much about, I guess, the lore of the world. He seems just to be like a traveler, and that he's not like a threat. He's just like a new flavor to the story, and I'm liking that he's been added, although it was a bit of a surprise because they haven't really talked about unnatural creatures except for the Trollocs and the Midriel, except for when people don't believe them in folk stories. So the fact that an entire race exists of these creatures that we don't really know about is something that's fairly not common, I don't think, because the way that this character is treated when he goes outside of this inn is with fear, and he gets chased away, and he has mobs follow him and try and attack him and that kind of thing. So he's not like commonplace, but I was still surprised to see him appear in the story anyway. So I'm hoping that he ends up sticking with them, because Rand has kind of rejected him to join them on his travels. So they're probably going to meet up in Tar Valon, or maybe even sooner. But my prediction is now that I'm very, very close to the end, because I just want to read through and I don't want to have to keep stopping for updates because it ruins the reading flow. So I want to update at the very, very end, which is why I'm talking a little bit more now. And I think at the very end, my prediction is that they're not going to get to Tarvalon. They're going to get picked up by the Queen or by some guards, and that's when trouble is going to go down in Camelon. And that trouble is what is going to pique Moraine's interest, and that's how she's going to find them. Or Moraine is going to run into trouble with Elaine, the Aes Sedai that is in the Queen's ear, who essentially runs Camelon, but nobody really wants to believe it. I think that's what's going to happen. One party with Moraine, Lan and Nynaeve are going to get picked up by the Queen, or Mat and Rand are going to get picked up by the guards and brought to the Queen. Either way, one of them is going to flag her attention and something is going to go down. Also, the White Cloaks are apparently in town, so we haven't really heard from them again since. We've mostly been following Mat and Rand. Maybe at the same time that one of the groups get noticed by the Queen is the same time that Perrin and Egwene are going to appear in the city with the group of White Cloaks that captured them. So I think it's all going to come to a head all at the same time, and I have no idea if this ends on a cliffhanger or not. I just finished The Wheel of Time. Well, I finished Eye of the World, so I finished book 1 and I think I'm gonna rate it a 4.5 stars. I have a lot to kind of catch up on because a lot happened in the last like 200 pages. So I left off before the groups had actually met up again, but I did predict that Rand would run into the Queen. I'm so happy I saw that coming, but it didn't really last for very long and it wasn't the effect that I expected it to have on the plot, but I think it's gonna have ramifications later. And I did kind of realize that Rand could wield the one power, and that's what came into play at the very end. And I thought more involvement would be from the other surrounding characters, but it was mostly just like focused on Rand, which was fine. I enjoyed it, but it seemed to start and end really quickly considering the build up for Balzamon or the Dark One for the entire story. So it seemed to end really quickly, and the way that it ended was like, he has died, and I don't think that's the case, even though Rand had like cut his cord. I don't think that's what happened. I think that he's still alive somehow, and obviously his power is still prevalent. Because when they came back out of the Eye of the World into the Blight was still very much functioning and the Eye of the World had died. So his power is still there, and obviously that's what we're going to explore later. And I knew that the group was going to get split up again, and they didn't end up going to Tar Valon, and they will in the future. And Rand can't go because he doesn't want the other Aes Sedai to gentle him, which is to cut him off from the one power the way they have cut off the characters in the past who have been men and acquired the one power. So he is technically the chosen one, which I thought would happen because why would we read from his perspective if he wasn't? So he's going to be the reason that the group splits, because he doesn't want to go with them to Tar Valon, and I have a feeling that Perrin probably won't stick around either. I think they're going to branch off, especially because he's involved with the wolves now, and I love that plot divergence. I love magic systems that involve animals and creatures, and Perrin's transformation into like a wolf brother, I think it was called, with his yellow eyes is just really super cool, and so I can't wait to see that explored more. And Egwene and Nynaeve I liked, but I think that this was not their story. They were just kind of along for the ride, and I think they'll get explored later because I've heard the different books follow different characters later in the series, so I'm imagining that they're going to get their own versions of books, I guess. But looping back into talking about the first book and the way it ended, I like that they all met up in Camelon, and that's what I thought would happen anyway. But the way it was done was awesome, and they took away Matt's paranoia because that did definitely happen from him taking the dagger, but it's not completely gone either. So there are a few threads in here that I'm looking forward to continuing, and the fact that Rand is the chosen one and he is like the new dragon, and I think that Tam is going to resurface later as well, because he can't just give him a heron-marked sword that Rand used to defeat the Dark One and then just not show up again. So I'm looking forward to the way that this is going to develop, because it's going to be a very detailed series. I can tell I'm invested in all, if not most, of the characters. I think the ones I'm least invested in are probably Moraine, Nynaeve, and maybe Mat. I'm interested in Perrin for sure, and obviously Rand because he's our main character in this book, and a little bit in Egwene as well, but I don't really like her characterization. She just seems really hot-headed, and I don't like that in a character. I like it when they think things through. So I think that's why I also like Perrin, because he's known as the quiet one who thinks things through. I gave this 4.5 stars. Like I said, I couldn't quite give it 5 because the way that the title of the book was shoehorned in at the end made me go, because I thought the Eye of the World was referring to the magic system in here, but it was actually referring to a literal place of magic, and that's obviously what died in here, and that's why it's called the Eye of the World. So I thought that that was a little bit not built up to my expectations, or not my expectations, but it just wasn't done in a way that was satisfying personally to me. I think it would benefit more from being more discussed, because it was glanced around a little bit, but it wasn't delved into. And I appreciate that there was a lot of stuff going on in here, so it might not necessarily have been able to be delved into. But anyway, I think I'm just rambling now. I did enjoy it a lot, and I am keen on finishing the rest of the series, so let that be known. I will continue. I don't know if I'm going to do vlogs for each of the books, but I feel like I've committed to them kind of now that I've done one for the first book. So let me know if you've read this book and what you thought about it. Please don't spoil me in the comments, because I am reading this series for the very first time and I want to go into it as spoiler-free as possible. But thank you so much for watching this video. I will chat to you in the comments and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.